Okay, shall we welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us, which for what promises to be a really fantastic afternoon's sessions. First up, I would like to introduce Michael Ellis, International Director of Michelin Guide. He's here to offer us all the secrets, the holy grail for restaurateurs, and tell us a little bit about how we can win them. Thanks very much. Welcome, Michael, to the stage.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's great to be back here again with you all. Excuse me, let me get this wire hanging out here. I am here to talk about the Michelin Guide, about what there is a certain amount of perceived secrecy or opacity that surrounds what we do, and I think that I want to kind of put that myth to rest because we're actually very open and transparent about what we do. But before that, I'd like to just talk very quickly about the history of the Michelin Guide so you know where we came from and how we got to where we are today. The Michelin Guide was started in France in 1900 by the Michelin brothers, so we've been around for over a century. The Michelin brothers founded a tire company back when there were very few automobiles in France. There was only about 4,000. And they realized that if they're going to sell tires, people had to drive. But in those days, there was no roads, there was no gas stations, there was no repair stations. There was really, people didn't know where to go. Cars were brand new. So the Michelin said, we're going to encourage people to go. We're going to encourage people to take their cars and drive as far as they can. So they had this guide that told people where they can get gasoline, where they can get their car fixed, where they could sleep, and where could they eat. And over the years, the people who were using the Michelin Guide noticed that the information regarding the hotels, and especially the restaurants, was particularly good. So we slowly and surely built up our knowledge and our footprint and our understanding of the hotel and especially the restaurant business. In 1926, so 26 years after the guide had been founded, we decided to signify or to recognize, this was in hotels mainly, hotels where the food was particularly good with a star, the symbol of a star. In 1931, we realized that there was varying degrees of quality of food, and we decided to go from 1, 2 to 3 stars, and that was in 1931. And then that really started the beginning with the Michelin star system. And then we changed, a decade later, we changed the symbol to kind of what is known as a macaroon or kind of a flower, the Michelin star as you see it today. We had very clear definitions for what a star is. 1 star means it's a very good cooking for a restaurant in this category. It's worth a stop. 2 stars signifies particularly good cooking. It's worth a detour. So it's worth going off of your regular path, going out of the way to go to this restaurant. And 3 stars, and I'll come back to that in a little bit, 3 stars recognizes and signifies a restaurant that is worth, in and of itself, the journey. It's worth it to make a pilgrimage to this restaurant. People go with the expressed intention of eating at this restaurant. And I think that has really transformed many restaurants and out-of-the-way places into really into places that people go from all over the world. How do we do this? What is the method that Michelin uses? The first thing and the most important thing is our inspector team. Michelin inspectors, and I think this is unique in the world as far as I know, Michelin inspectors are 100% full-time Michelin employees. They are full-time salary employees. They eat anonymously. They're always going, and when they eat, they never announce themselves. They reserve under usually false names. They have credit cards with false names, and I can tell you that was very difficult to come up with for the banks. And they always pay their bills. So this means that we have what we feel is true independence. Our inspectors are treated like any other customer coming into a restaurant. They don't get special treatment. And I can tell you, food writers or me, who I'm obviously the spokesperson and the visual face of the Michelin Guide, when I go into a restaurant and I'm recognized, I get totally different treatment than the other people in the restaurant because they know who I am. So our inspectors need to have the experience as any other client would have. Our inspectors are also food experts. I often get the question, how does one become a Michelin inspector? I'd love to have that job. And I think that the reality of it is not quite as fun as it may sound. But our inspectors, the vast majority, come from hotel or cooking schools. They've usually worked in the hotel and restaurant business, either in the back of the house as a chef, or a chef de partie, or a commis, either in the kitchen, or in the front of the house, either as a sommelier, a maître d'hôtel, or a waiter, or a manager of some sort. The second thing is, they have to have the ability to taste. And this is a physiological ability that we've seen. You see this in other professions as well. People who work in the perfume business, they call them noses. People are able to smell perfumes. In the wine business, sommeliers, people are able to smell and taste wines. And that is due, and it's been proven physiologically, that it has to do with the number of taste buds on your tongue and where they're located, that ability to taste things. The second thing they have to be able to do is they have to be able to think about and reflect on what they're tasting, and in their minds understand that and then translate it into writing. And that's very, very difficult to do. There are people who are able to taste and people who are able to write, but to be able to eat and write is a very difficult skill. So what we do is once we get a lot of CVs every year, the reality of being a Michelin inspector is not quite as fun or as glamorous as it sounds. They're on the road basically 5 days a week, eating 10 meals a week away from home, usually by themselves. They are anonymous and they pay their bills, and they inspect usually hotels between meals. So you really have to enjoy eating by yourself. I've gone on the road after 2 or 3 days. I've had my fill. It's really it's a grind. But for people who are really, really interested in eating, really obsessed with eating food, it's a very interesting job. We have virtually no turnover. Most of the people who join as Michelin inspectors usually are about 10 to 15 years out of school. They usually retire. They leave when they retire. It is primarily a male-oriented job, although I have a head of one zone, head of North American zone is female, the head of the UK is female, the head of France is female as well. And we have about maybe 6 or 7 inspectors around of the corps that are female, for the simple reason that because it's such a travel-intensive schedule, it's not often compatible with family life. So it's really a lifestyle choice. The Michelin inspectors are locals wherever they are around the world. They're Americans in the United States, they're Japanese in Japan, there'll be Emiratis in Dubai if we ever come to Dubai, which I'm hoping for, which is very important because you have to have local knowledge and local understanding. I often also get the question, well, how do you compare food in Tokyo, Madrid, New York, and Rome? It's all so different. And I'll say, yes, it is, but I'll tell you how we do it. It's what we look for. The Michelin inspector he looks for 5 criteria. And these are the criteria that are used to judge the restaurant, to give the opinion, to give the awarding of the star or the bib gourmand. And it's written actually in the guide. So people say, oh, no one knows how Michelin makes their decisions, and that's simply not true. We do, and we're very open about it. The first thing we look at is the quality of the ingredients. And I mentioned this when I spoke with you yesterday. The cornerstone of good cooking is the quality of the ingredients. And without that, it's hard to make good food. So the inspector is looking for the quality. Is the fish fresh? Does the tomato taste like a tomato? I think you all know. I've tasted tomatoes that taste like cardboard, that have no taste at all. I've also had tomatoes that taste incredibly intensely tomatoey. That's the quality of the ingredient. The same thing with the meat. All the products are the highest quality. The second thing, and I think this is extremely important, and this is probably the hardest thing to explain also to the chefs, it's the skill in preparation and it's the mastery of the cooking technique. Is the product perfectly cooked? A piece of fish, a piece of sea bass, for example, probably has a window of about 30 seconds when it's perfectly cooked. Before that 30-second window, it's not cooked enough. After that 30-second window, it's too cooked. It's extremely subtle, but that's exactly where we have to be aimed for. The same thing is with meat, although I do often hear, yes, but it depends. Some people like their meat very, very rare, or bleu, as they say in French, which is barely cooked. Other people like it very well done. Our inspectors have a view that based upon the type of the meat, the fat content, the cut of the meat, there is a perfect type of cooking level. The third thing is the combination and the harmony and the equilibrium in the flavors. This is also very important. I think you all know, you've tasted something when there's a flavor, it's off balance. Either the flavor is too intense or not intense enough. When you have a béarnaise sauce, for example, and the tarragon is overpowering or it's not there. If you taste a sauce vierge, for example, and there's too much shallots in it, it's very easy, or there's too much salt. I mean, sometimes I've had sauces that they're just too salty, or too peppery, or too something, or not enough something else. That is the equilibrium and the harmony and the textures. The fourth thing we look at is for value for money. And I know that's a very relative concept. You can have everything from 3-star restaurants that can cost 500 euros a head in Paris. The other extreme would be a 1-star restaurant in Hong Kong, Tim Ho Wan, where you can eat for basically 10 euros a 1-star meal. So those are the extremes, but I think what we really is important is we look for is the overall quality of what you're getting in the plate, is that value for money. And the final thing, and this is also something that's very important to us, it's consistency, regularity over time and throughout the menu. So when our inspectors go, when we're going to a 2- or 3-star restaurant, they usually go as a pair, 2 people, because it's rare that people go to 2- and 3-star restaurants by themselves, although some people do. I know I did before I used to go to work at the Michelin Guide. But in order for them not to be recognized, they go in pairs. One person will order either the tasting menu or a la carte, or a lunch menu, because we like to see the difference between what is on the actual tasting, on the a la carte menu versus the tasting menu. And they will go and they will each do their meals, and then afterwards they write the reports up. We do briefs with in most countries after the meal has been taken and if the inspector is finishing his tour of the zone. He will introduce himself to the chef and ask to visit the kitchen to see if everything is spotless, clean, and whatnot. But since we do have these army of inspectors in each country, we're able to move them for different parts of the country each year. So the same inspector would not go back to the same area for between 5 and 7 years. And that way we do maintain the anonymous quality of the inspectors. I'll go, but I'll show you, I'll give you our footprint and tell you how many restaurants and what the star selection looks like around the world in a minute. But the most visible thing of what we do, even though it's only 15% of our work, is the 3-star restaurants. And they're currently, I can't mention 2016 because we haven't finished yet. We still have one more guide to come out, which is Rio, Sao Paulo in Brazil, our second edition, which will be coming out in April. But for example, in 2015, there was 109, of the 20,000 restaurants in the guide, there was 109 3-star restaurants. A 3-star restaurant, a 3rd star, any addition of a star really often changes the life of a chef because it shines an international spotlight on the chef, and people from around the world will go to the restaurant, especially the 3-star restaurants. This top picture here you see, we launched at the French Foreign Ministry last year. That's me standing next to Laurent Fabius, who's the French Foreign Minister. The French government has finally recognized that the Michelin has done a tremendous service to the tourism industry in France, and which is why the French Foreign Ministry they also handle economic development as well. So that was a great honor for us to be there. Down below you see our first guide to Tokyo, when we invited all the 3-star chefs from around the world to come to this event. It will come no surprise to most of you that food has become, in the last 20 years, an obsession. It's become show business, and there's a very fine line between being a television star, a rock star, and being a rock star chef. Guys like Gordon Ramsay or Heston Blumenthal, or some of the chefs in Australia, Jean-Georges in New York. They've become rock stars. Eric Ripert at Le Bernardin. And it's very important for us to federate this community because people like to go the press likes it, the public like to be seen with chefs and have chefs around. So it's very important for us to federate that community. I apologize, this is hard to see, but if you just look on the screen, I will show you here. You'll see the countries, the number of restaurants that are actually in the guide. And you see, for example, there's over 4,000 restaurants in the French guide, French in Monaco, but there's only a little over 600 that actually have stars. So only 15% of the restaurants have stars. Then we have what's called unfortunately not well known enough award called the Bib Gourmand. Bib Gourmand, we really have to get the word out. It's really great value for money. It's a first course, main course, and a dessert for 36 euros or under in Paris and 32 euros or under in the provinces. So that's something that's really value for money. I know personally when I go out, I like to go to Bib Gourmands because you're sure to get a great meal for a very reasonable price. Down below you see we have almost 20,000 restaurants in the Michelin guides around the world. That'll be a little bit more when the Rio Sao Paulo guide comes out. But only, the number of stars are 2,700. So once again, we're at less than 15%. But we do find that when the restaurants do get a star, it definitely puts that restaurant on the map. Unfortunately, we have to take stars away as well, because we visit all the starred restaurants. We visit basically all the restaurants in the guide at least once a year, once every 2 years for the ones that don't have stars. And if we do find a problem, well, we can find one of three things if we go to a starred restaurant. Either solid star, nothing to say, okay, the inspector will say, move on, okay, they'll continue going. Other option is, weak, not good, didn't have a good experience. The fish was undercooked or overcooked, or the sauce, the sauce bordelaise on my entrecôte was too salty. In that case, we'll send another inspector or a pair of inspectors back to see if we can confirm the suppression of the star or the second star. And sometimes we'll go back twice, 3 times, 4 times, because we're very aware of the impact that this can have, the economic impact. The other more pleasant option is the inspector says, wow, something's going on here. There's some magic in here. I think we can give them a second star or a third star. And once again, we send them back, the inspectors back again, so we can confirm the second or third star. This year in the French guide, for example, which we launched a few weeks ago, we had 2 new 3 stars, both in Paris, the Christian Lesquer at Le 5 at the Georges V Hotel, and at the Four Seasons in Paris, and Alain Ducasse at the Plaza. We also had to move 2 restaurants from 3 to 2 stars. The Relais Loiseau, Bernard Loiseau's restaurant, his wife's restaurant in Saulieu, and the the Maurice Hotel in Paris. So we obviously much prefer to give stars than just take them away, but we do have to take them away, but we are aware of that impact that can have on the restaurant. That was my last slide. I'll leave that up there for you. So that's just a very brief view of what we do at the Michelin Guide. I hope that lifts a little bit of the curtain of opacity. We try to be open. I encourage chefs to come and see us, especially the starred chefs. We can talk about their dossier. I prefer if they come early in the year because we can say, hey, we have a problem. We do not proactively go towards the chefs and say, hey, watch out, we had a problem in your restaurant. But if they come and they see us in Paris, we'll say, hey, we'll share with them what our inspectors found. We can't tell them what to do to get a second or third star. One thing I do say is many times chefs who have 2 stars want to get the third star, and they want to go from 1 to 2. It's about emotion. When you're in a 3-star restaurant, you should be having a unique experience. You should be eating something that you've never had before, something that you will not forget. I remember meals I've had 20, 25 years ago, that you eat something and you say, my gosh, I've never had anything like this in my life. That is what a 3-star restaurant should be. It's not easy to do. But when it happens, you know it. I think it's a great experience for everybody. So that's a little snapshot on the window of the Michelin world. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions for Michael? Yeah. Thank you very much. That was fantastic. And thank you very much for your time. Really, really interesting. And certainly something we want to all aim for. Please.
Thanks for this. That's really insightful. Just a quick question. You said you have 20,000 restaurants in the guide.
Yeah.
That's obviously not all the restaurants that are out there. So how do you even get them into the guide in the first place?
That's a good question. The response to that is we do our homework. Before we go into a new city, I'll take for example of Rio Sao Paulo. Okay, we launched last year. We're doing our 2nd edition in April. There are 25 million people in Sao Paulo and probably, 10,000 restaurants, and there's 6 million people in Rio de Janeiro. But we only have 146 restaurants in the guide. So, and to your question, how do we come up with that? And the answer is, if we do our homework properly, using other restaurant guides, using magazine articles, using the internet, using all different types of sources, and even talking to people who know, talking to chefs locally, we're able to boil down, there's probably 3/4 or 80% of the restaurants that are they're just standard, pedestrian restaurants. They're like gas stations. People go to eat just because they need fuel, they need calories. And they wouldn't be restaurants that were really interested in the Michelin Guide. Once we get once we boil down that, then we go and we start looking at the menus, either visiting them online or visiting them in person to see if there's something that would be there. If we see nothing but grilled steaks and roast chicken and French fries or fried potatoes, we realize that that's really not, that's fine that they do that, but that's not something that our readers will be interested in. And it's true. I mean, there's a lot of restaurants that do a great. I'd rather see a restaurant not in the Michelin Guide that's full, bustling, packed. I've got them in my neighborhood in Paris. It'll never be in the Michelin Guide, but gosh, it's a great business. Good for them. But that's not what our readers are looking for. That's not what the people in this. We're looking for a restaurant that really. And I'll give you an example. When you go into any port city in the Mediterranean, whether it's in Italy or the French coast, the Atlantic coast, you'll see the port there, and there'll be 50 restaurants. I think this is the same all around the world. One after another right next to each other. And you're like, which of these, the menus all basically look the same, more or less. How do you know which one? One of those has got us, at least one is probably going to stand out and be much better than the other ones. That's what we do. And we do that by narrowing it down, looking at them, and then going them and visiting them. It's a long and arduous and expensive process. Because the Michelin company, as I said, I think we're the only ones in the world to do that. They give me the resources, they give us the resources to pay the salaries, to pay the travel expenses, to pay the meals, to pay the car, the car leasing, and so it's hugely expensive. And we're not a profit center, I'll put it like that, but we create value for the Michelin brand. So we do the best we can. Do we get everything right the first time or even the second time? Probably not. But I think that what we try to do is give the best coverage of a city we can with the resources that we have.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Do we have another question?
Yes, sir. We have them already. That's a good question. We have, and I think Book a Table, as Joe Steele mentioned earlier, will help us accelerate that. We currently have applications available for Italy, for France, Germany, and New York. So we're ramping up. We have the digital challenge. The digital is essential for us going forward, and we're putting the resources there. So hopefully we'll be able to have all full digital coverage everywhere very shortly.
Fantastic. There's one at the back of there, please.
Just a quick question on price point. Given today's market and how conscious people are with price, when you see a restaurant getting a Michelin star, they tend to want to naturally inflate their prices. And do you think that it becomes prohibitive then for the consumer?
No, I think that's, I mean, if I understand your question, is it with the impact of the Michelin star on the pricing the restaurant offers for its customers? That's a restaurant, that's a good question. I mean, that's a personal choice of the restaurant. I mean, there are some restaurants, when they get their star, they decide to up their game because they are getting different customers. It's not an easy, the awarding of a star changes your life, okay? And getting the second star, the third star, it'll change your customer base. And there have been cases of people who have went from 0 to 1 stars, and it's tough because their customers come demanding. They expect good service. They expect a good wine list. They expect, the star is only about what's in the plate. It's only about, it has nothing to do with the surroundings, despite what everyone thinks. It's only about what's in the plate. Having said that, when people go and are willing to spend the money to get a star quality meal, they also expect a certain level of comfort and a certain level of service. And if there's a décalage, as they say, there's a disequilibrium between what's in the plate and the surrounding services, that star will put that into light. It's obviously a personal choice for a chef if he wants to raise his prices, so that's not something we can really comment on, but I think that the most important thing, I'll put it this way. The message that I give to all chefs who come to see us is very simple. Objective number one is to fill your restaurant up with happy customers who want to come back. Make sure that your restaurant is profitable, viable enterprise. You've got employees, you've got suppliers, you've got a family. Make sure your business is good. If you do that well, or particularly well, we will find you. The Michelin Guide will find you, and we will give you the award you think. But make sure your business is running. And chefs are often a combination of they're half high-performance athletes, half artists. And they want to be recognized by their public, but they want to be recognized by Michelin as well. They're not always businessmen, and that's very important. Make sure that your restaurant is, nothing makes us sadder than to see a restaurant in the Guide with a Michelin star that goes out of business, and it does happen. And that means they haven't figured something out. You go on a street, you'll see two restaurants. One is packed, the other one is half empty. That means one of them has figured out what his customers want to pay and what they want to eat. And it sounds easy, but so many restaurants don't do that.
Fantastic. So fill your restaurants with happy customers. Any more questions? One more. Danny? Danny?
Yeah. Yes. There's two chefs that stick out. One is the most starred chef in the world is Joël Robuchon, who currently has 26 Michelin stars through his establishments, notably the Atelier Robuchon. It's basically a chain. He's got 13 of them. They're great. They're product-driven, open kitchens, inspired by Japan. Sushi bars are all black. You're at a counter. And it's product. If you want to find out, it's just, all of them have 2 stars. Well, the one in London has 1 star. One of the 2 in Paris just went from 2 to 1, and the one in Hong Kong has 3 stars. But it's all about product, and it's all about cooking. The other chef is Alain Ducasse, who's got 19 stars across his constellation of restaurants. One thing is very important, and a gentleman asked me the question earlier. A star is not awarded to a chef. A chef does not have a star. The establishment has the star. It means it's the chef, it's his team, it's the actual physical place that has the star. If a chef leads, so there's almost a misnomer, a Michelin-starred chef. It's not really like that. We don't make too big of a deal of it, but a chef can't say, okay, I'm leaving, Chez Paul to go to Chez Marie, and I'm taking my star with me. That's not the way it works. If a chef leaves a restaurant, he goes, and then we go back. It depends upon the timing, because we usually close the guide, Michelin, the French guide, for example, in the month of October, and it's usually published in February. So there's a time between we actually have to obviously stop the actual inspection process to write the texts and publish the guide. But if we're able to go before, let's say a chef leaves and his sous chef takes over. If we're able to go back and we see that the sous chef is able to execute the same level of quality that when the chef was there, we will maintain the star. If not, then we take the star away. Or if the establishment is unable to tell us who's going to be taking over, then we'll take the star away and wait for next year. Same thing if a chef goes from one place, with a starred chef goes from one place to a new place. Let's say the new place is a brand new restaurant, or a restaurant that does not have a star. If we have the time to go and have several meals and we can say, yep, this chef is able to deliver star-level cooking, then we'll award the star. But and just in the same thing, people can't give their stars back. It's not an Oscar. It's not a physical thing. It's an opinion. It's like an architect opinion, or an art critic's opinion. Pablo. If an art critic says to a Picasso, "I don't like this Picasso," Picasso can't say, if he was alive, can't say, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm giving your opinion back to you." That's not the way it works. It's a point of view.
Okay, thank you very much. We've run out of time. I'm sure Michael's going to be around for the next hour or so for you to, if you've got any further questions, please grab him.
I'll be, for those of you at the dinner tonight, I will be available at the dinner, and we'll be more than happy to talk to you about the Michelin Guide.
And that's fantastic news. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much indeed.